Fentanyl is killing millions of Americans. It's flooding across the north and south borders. That's why we need to impose tariffs on both Canada and Mexico, not to mention China, who creates all those illegal drugs in secret labs to distribute to the American people. Stop lying, Donald. Let's talk some facts. Hey everyone, it's Surant in China. How y'all doing today? I'm doing fantastic, though it is a bit of a rainy day. That's fine. It's nice and dry in here. And it's very nice that so many more of you are remembering to help the channel out by hitting that subscribe button down below. And if you like the content you're seeing, throwing me a thumbs up will really help the channel to grow, as well as both of those things trigger the YouTube algorithm to share my videos with more people. And of course, comments help too. Good comments or even crazy comments, I love them all. Thank you all so much. Now, let's get to today's topic, which is a pretty serious one. And to be quite honest, it is based on an outright lie by Donald Trump. I honestly believe that he does know the truth of the matter and that he is using a very, very terrible situation for his own political benefit. And that is the situation of illegal drugs and fentanyl. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on with Donald Trump, let's talk about fentanyl a little bit, because a lot of people are scared by the name. They're afraid that if they even come into the same room with fentanyl, that they're going to die instantly, when really fentanyl is not what people think it is. Fentanyl is not a drug being created in secret drug dens and drug labs in China and then shipped under the cover of the night across the border with the intention of killing American citizens. This is not Breaking Bad, people. Fentanyl is a legitimate pharmaceutical drug that has been used for decades, and specifically because of the fact that not only it is a very powerful painkiller and sedative, but it's also very safe when used in a clinical and medical way. So let's take a look at the actual history of it here. Looking at Wikipedia, I'll just briefly go over this, but fentanyl is a highly potent synthetic piperidine opioid, primarily used as an analgesic, a pain medication. It's 30 to 50 times more potent than heroin and 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine. Its primary clinical utility is pain management for cancer patients and those recovering from painful surgeries. Fentanyl is also used as a sedative, and depending on the method of delivery, fentanyl can be very fast acting, and ingesting a relatively small quantity can cause overdose. Okay, so fentanyl is sold under several brand names. Now, the key takeaway here is that fentanyl is not an illicit drug. It is a licit or legal drug that is used by hospitals, doctors, and clinics around the world, and has been since 1968. This is not a new drug that is being developed just for killing people. Right? Fentanyl was first synthesized by Paul Janssen in 1959 and was approved for medical use in the United States in 1968. Not 2020, 1968. Okay. In 2015, 1,600 kilograms, 3,500 pounds were used by healthcare globally, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So this is not an uncommon or new drug by any means. Now, the problem with fentanyl is not how it's produced, where it's produced, or why it's produced. It's produced for so many legitimate reasons. The problem is that the drug cartels and the drug dealers have found that if they mix fentanyl with their own illegal drugs that they are selling, like heroin, this makes it intensely more powerful, and as such, intensely more addictive. Unfortunately, it also makes it insanely more deadly. It is so much easier to overdose and die from fentanyl than it is by any other drug on the market. But this is not the purpose of fentanyl. As we can see here, the actual medical uses of fentanyl are anesthesia, regional anesthesia. Now, one of the reasons they use this for regional anesthesia is it's very, very effective. It has a quick onset action of 5 to 10 minutes and an intermediate duration of 60 to 120 minutes. So that means when they're doing surgery on you, they can localize it to a very small area. It works very, very quickly and will last long enough for them to typically be able to finish the surgery. Now, this can be administered in many, many different ways. It's also, which I found quite surprising, used in obstetrics, meaning having babies. If you've ever known anybody or had an epidural during pregnancy because you were having a painful or difficult pregnancy, there's a very good chance you received fentanyl. And the reason being that fentanyl is very localized, so they could give the mother a painkiller that would only affect the certain area of her body that was in pain from the birth and would not affect the baby. So this is, in so many ways, a seriously safe and manageable drug. It's also used for pain management. They give it to people for chronic pain. You can take it in tablets, you can take it in lozenges, you can take it in nasal sprays, in patches that you put on your skin, in other. I can't remember the name for it, but you can put it on your gums for faster acting relief. There are so many different uses for this drug for helping people with extreme pain. It was even used in combat medicine, which is wild. They would take a lozenge made of fentanyl and tape it to the finger of their patient so that the patient could put it in their mouth. And by the time the fentanyl had released the pain enough that they would nod off, their finger would come out of their mouth, and that would prevent them from overdosing. And that way, even in the field, instead of measuring exact doses of the medicine, they could just give a person a lollipop attached to their finger. And as soon as they nodded off, the drug was gone. Amazing, amazing. So many uses for this theoretically illegal and terrible drug. Now, the big problem with fentanyl is, like I said, that such a small amount, if not very, very specifically administered, can be deadly. A very, very small amount. And it does cause respiratory problems. It causes muscle rigidity. It causes the fentanyl fold. If you've ever seen drug addicts on the streets, they're folded over and hunched over. It's specifically because the fentanyl causes their body to lose control and they just kind of nod off. They're like sleeping on their feet. And of course, overdose. Overdose, the tiniest amount can kill you very, very quickly. And unlike other drugs, there is a brand of anti-narcotic called Narcan, which can be administered to people in an overdose state. However, fentanyl is so strong that they often have to administer it several times in order for it to start working. So all in all, yes, fentanyl does have the potential to be a very dangerous drug, but that doesn't mean that it's being created as such. It is being bastardized by the criminal community in order to sell their products and to make their drugs more addictive. So this is where the big lie comes in. Now, Donald Trump came out at the beginning of his presidency. Here we have an article from NPR. Trump used fentanyl to justify tariffs, but the crisis was already easing. Now, Trump, everybody knows, is a liar. He lies through his teeth about everything. And even when he gets fact checked, he will keep lying. So here, President Trump says that illegal street fentanyl is one of the main justifications for sweeping trade tariffs he plans to impose against Canada, China, and Mexico on Tuesday. The statement issued by the White House describes the synthetic opioid as fueling a national emergency. Now, this is important. that warranted tough action. Now, President Trump and his team misstate, key facts about the fentanyl crisis. Bullshit. They did not misstate anything. They are lying on purpose. On Inauguration Day, Trump said foreign drug cartels are killing 250,000 or 300,000 Americans per year. On Friday, White House spokesliar Karen Leavitt said that tariffs are warranted because fentanyl has killed tens of millions of Americans. Tens of millions. These claims are false. While the overdose epidemic is a serious crisis, experts in law enforcement, drug policy research, and public health agree that street drugs, have killed vastly fewer people, not hundreds of thousands, tens of millions like they're saying. During the most severe period of the opioid crisis in 2022 and 2023, total overdose deaths, including fentanyl, methamphetamines, heroin, cocaine, and all other drugs, peaked at around 114,000 fatalities per year. So that's not just fentanyl, that's everything. And while drug overdose deaths have been wrenching many families, fentanyl deaths haven't come close to killing tens of millions of people. Again, this is a political lie to pull the heartstrings of the voters and get their support because they're using fear as a political tactic. State and federal data also shows the crisis was improving at an unprecedented pace before these tariffs were announced. Fatal overdoses from fentanyl and all other street drugs have plummeted nationally by more than 21% since June 2023, according to the latest data from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, likely an organization that Donald Trump will cancel or defund, I would highly suspect, falling below 90,000 deaths in a 12-month period, not tens of millions. For the first time in roughly half a decade. So, what role does Canada play in the U.S. fentanyl supply? Almost none. In its fact sheet, the Trump administration says Canada has a growing footprint in narcotics distribution with Mexican cartels active in the country. Mexican cartels active in Canada. Bullshit. But law enforcement and drug policy experts agree that Canada plays a minimal role in fentanyl smuggling in the U.S. During remarks Saturday night, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said that smuggling from Canada contributes less than 1% of fentanyl street supply in the U.S. In fact, if we take a look at another article here, according to data from the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, not the Canadians, only about 0.2% of all seizures of fentanyl entering the U.S. are made at the Canadian border. Almost all the rest are confiscated at the U.S. border with Mexico. Okay, so this whole lie about fentanyl and even illegal aliens flooding across the border from Canada is a whole bunch of dog eating. It's crap. Now, Mexico, on the other hand, is a different story, and there's a reason for this. Not only are the drug cartels primarily located in Mexico, but Mexico also creates precursor drugs for fentanyl, the same way China does. Now, like I said earlier, China is not making these drugs in secret labs, hidden away from the government, and smuggling them into America overseas in shipping containers. That's simply not happening. China is producing the precursor drugs in an industrial sense for the medical market, as they have been for decades. This is not something that they've just started doing to attack the American way of life. This is something that China does. In the same way that this pen is made in China because it's cheaper to produce in China, these glasses are made in China because they're cheaper to be made in China. Precursor drugs are also made in China by global medical companies and then shipped overseas. The way that the majority of the precursors are getting into the drug cartels' hands are either smuggling from the manufacturers directly through illicit means, or what's more common is drug dealers and drug assistants, I guess I would call them, are using either shady doctors or legitimate doctors and claiming they have more problems than they do, and getting illegal prescriptions or legal prescriptions and then selling them to the dealers. Once again, it takes a tiny, tiny amount of fentanyl to enhance an entire shipment of heroin. So it's very easy to go to a doctor and say, "Oh, I have such terrible pain. I have such terrible pain. I need something very, very strong." It's how people used to get Oxycontin back in the day, which was then sold to the dealers who would then turn around and sell it at a much bigger profit. It's exactly the same thing that's happening with fentanyl. So when it comes to these lies about floods, masses of fentanyl coming into America from China, Mexico, and Canada, specifically to kill American citizens, it's all bullshit. But the bigger question is why? Why would Donald Trump go to all the trouble of telling these lies when it's very, very easy to find the actual information that shows that this is not the case? Well, the primary reason is tariffs. And I know you're thinking tariffs. What the hell do tariffs have to do with illegal drugs? Well, for Donald Trump to impose these tariffs, 25% on Mexico and Canada, an additional 10% or 60% on China, in the past, he couldn't have just done that on his own. He would have to get congressional approval, which would mean he would have to have hearings and he would have to have votes before he could make those decisions. However, there is a clause in the American government that says in times of crisis that the president can make unilateral single person decisions and change things, change laws, or do things like impose tariffs. So by claiming that China, Canada, and Mexico are part of an illegal drug smuggling operation and huge illegal immigration, it gives him the power to create these tariffs and impose these tariffs without even needing to talk to Congress. He can do it all on his own. And he needs to do it all on his own because if he took it to Congress, not only would it be a long and difficult process, but it likely wouldn't happen because there are enough actual intelligent people in Congress that would see through the lies and realize that what Donald Trump is doing is hurting the American people for his own political gains. So, by creating a common enemy, he is able to impose penalties or theoretical penalties on these enemies without having to deal with the ramifications of actually doing it in a political sense with the rest of the government backing. So, long story short, it's all a lie. Donald Trump created this situation with Canada, Mexico, and China simply to impose tariffs and to be able to rule like a dictator without needing the approval or even consensus of his own government. It's bad politics, it's shady politics, and it just once again shows how much of a con man and liar the President of the United States actually is. Anyway, I hope that enlightened a few of you about exactly what the fentanyl crisis is. And yes, fentanyl is a terrible drug when used as a street drug, when used by the cartels and the drug dealers as an illicit substance. It kills people. It's devastating. It destroys families, and it is really having a negative effect. But it's not having the negative effect that Donald Trump is claiming it is. Now, I get a lot of comments on my videos, people saying, "Hey, tell China to stop selling fentanyl. Tell them to stop supplying the drug dealers with these illegal drugs." China is not. Period. They are not selling illegal drugs to the drug dealers. They are selling legal, licit precursor drugs with legitimate medical value, substantial medical value to hospitals, clinics, and medical centers around the world, and they have been for decades. Now, if you really want to stop the drug problem in America, maybe you should look at stopping the people from buying it, as opposed to stopping the people from supplying it to the drug dealers. Why don't you deal with the drug issue itself, the illegal drug issue, as opposed to the manufacturer? That's like saying that, you know, I could do the same thing and say, this metal spoon here, I could grind down the edge and turn this into a shiv, and then I could kill people with it. So we need to stop making spoons and stop importing spoons into America, because spoons can be lethal weapons. And it could. But does that make the spoon the problem, or the person who's sharpening it up and stabbing people with it? Ridiculous. Anyway, this video is going on longer than I expected. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I appreciate all of your support, and I will see you in the next video.